so many people that I've either worked with or coached with. When I say coached with, sometimes it means at a throws club session, standing next to them and coaching with them, or standing next to them while they coach their kids at a conference meet or a state meet. I do think we coach one of the unique sports where, we're standing next to each other while we're coaching our kids. We're not on opposite sides of a football field, or, there's not referees and separating our benches or things like that. And I think there's a camaraderie of shared information. And I don't have any secrets, and I certainly don't know everything, but I will share with you how I approach things today and tomorrow in two very different ways. Today's about progressions and drills. Most of you have seen a presentation like this. I'm hoping I add some nuance to what you do, or at least you can kind of wrap your head around how I approach it and whether you think it's good or not. Just certainly be kind. But if you've got questions along the way, I would love to hear them. Tomorrow, my talk is, again, about the Discus, but setting up kind of a system, a season, a program, a 4-year plan, the idea of stepping back away from drills, and how do you get kids from 0 to more than 65 feet in the Discus. This is, if you guys aren't familiar, Madison Throws Club, I coach a lot of kids. I coach some of your kids, which is a really wonderful thing. It's something I'm just crazy passionate about. The fact that my wife lets me do it as much as I do it is a blessing, because it brings me a lot of happiness. And outside of my wife and my 2 kids, throws is what I think. Oh, and I have a job, I teach, but something's got to pay the bills. Certainly, track coaching does not pay anybody's bills. So anyway, if you're not familiar with Madison Throws Club, you guys, I have a website. You can't see anything. I think I might just be talking and telling stories today. I don't know if you'll be able to see my PowerPoint. It's a little light right here, but Bill mentioned the all-time video list that I'm trying to put together, and I get really cool emails from, hey, I think I have like a Super 8 video of my son throwing. I got an email last week. I'm like, okay, I've never transferred Super 8 to a digital file before, but let's figure this out. So if you know of big throws that are on the top 30 of this boys or girls shot or disc, and you know there's a video somewhere, I would love to know where that is. And right now, I don't know, I think I have about 15% of the throws, but I do have the top throw in all the events in state history, which is pretty cool. But I just keep adding videos. When I get them, I add them to the list. And at some point, I'll take this list out of the Madison Throws Club site and just have it be a site so that it's a resource for coaches, and it's a resource for that hopefully will inspire our kids to do great things. And I think we're in a really interesting time of the internet. Kids are watching videos on their own. You guys are watching more videos. Certainly, I was telling Dean, I think last night we were talking, I had a Madison videotape that I wore out in high school, a VHS tape, and I played that thing like nobody's business. And so we're in a time when there's a lot of information available, but I think to have kids see what it looks like for a high school kid to do some of the things that our state's history has done is really powerful for kids to see, like, that's doable. Or that Jill Pedretti, she wasn't 6'4" and 200 pounds. She was a little spark plug. So to see some of those things, I think, is really powerful. And I think we're on the verge of some of those records being broken. And we've got some kids this year that want to do that, and that would be exciting. What do we do in a season to get from where we start to where we go? I'm a big fan of drills. I have a big throws group, a very large number of kids that come out to throw at Memorial, and so I've figured out a lot of ways to do throwing without actually throwing. We just line my kids up in the line. I'd be there till 10 p.m. Last year I had 43 throwers. That doesn't work so well. So you'll see a lot of drills today, or maybe you won't see drills because it's hard to see. Some of you saw this video maybe a couple years ago. I did a different talk on the Discus with Coach Brian Storms from Nona Grove. So some of this, there's a couple videos in here that are repeats, but This is Corinne Franz. She was a state champion in 2012 and 2013 in the Disc Division I girls. This is her first competition throw as a freshman. And I don't know if you can see that, but I'm fairly certain the fence was afraid. I was a little bit afraid. I know the official was standing to the right of me, and he had to get some new shorts. So what are we going to do to get from here, when we get kids that don't know how to walk straight, to something that looks more like this? I'm sorry you can't see that, but there's a rhythm there, there's some footwork there. There's a lot of things that go into that, and there's a lot of throws that go into that. How many of you have coached first-year coaches? Let's do that. We'll start at the bottom. First-year coaches? Hey, welcome to the group, you guys. Girls? Second year? 5 years? 10 years? 15? 20? 25? Keep your hands up. 30? Keep your hands up. 35? 36? 37? 38? 39? 38? How about a round of applause for those guys right there? 41. Gruen just said 41, but he didn't hold his hand up because he's tired. So there are a lot of people who have a lot of good answers, and I certainly do not mean to say that I know everything. So here's my take on what has helped me get some of my kids to be successful. And I say some because when you have 43 kids, I guarantee you, there are some kids that still don't know what they would know what they're doing to the best of my efforts. So here's where we're going to go today. I always try to kind of be transparent about the direction we're going. I teach the circle front to back. I know most people do. Anyone teach back to front? Anyone start rotating and not to teach power position? And there's some reasons where once I've got some advanced kids, we go to the back of the circle and we'll work on stuff and talk about entry a lot, or maybe a little. I don't know. If you want to talk about discus entry positions, I could go on for hours. I start from the front. We'll talk about the grip really briefly. Power position, stand throw, wheel position, wheel throw. I'm a big believer in the wheel throw and getting kids to learn how to do that drill properly. Most kids don't like it. Do you agree? Because it's hard. Okay, it's probably the hardest thing that we coach in the shot and discus. Save some hammer and jab stuff. I think it's probably the hardest concept for kids to kind of grasp and then get their body to cooperate and do. So we'll talk about wheel position. I do not like the South African. We'll talk a little bit about that. There are some reasons to do it. I taught a lot of South African when I started, and I don't think we did a single South African drill the last 2 years, at least at Memorial High School. With advanced kids, I'll definitely do some South African, but more in rotational shot than discus. Wind and entry, and full throws. The grip, new folks, there's videos out there that you could read about this. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this slide. Basically, there's two ways. You can hold those two fingers together, split the discus in half with your index finger and middle finger are touching each other just on the back half of the disc. That last little digit just hangs over the edge. We're not like palming the discus. The thumb rests on top of the grip. It doesn't have really anything to do with holding the discus except guidance. It doesn't carry any weight. And hands should stay on top of the discus throughout the throw. If you have the slideshow, there's some slides that are not in the slideshow because I added a slide this morning after I had a moment in the shower. So, but if you look up online, this slide's on there, probably a lot clearer. The one thing I do see about the grip, you guys, is kids like to turn that discus over right from you're teaching them power position, and the first thing they do is they don't want to wind the discus up because it's going to fall out of their hands, right? So how do you navigate that space when they aren't willing to turn the discus, over the proper way? If you're going to do a have them pause at the back of power position, they're going to probably turn that discus upright, and I feel great about that. But from the back of the circle, when we're winding the discus, my hand's on top, A lot of people do a static start where they start this, and the discus goes kind of this complete vertical position before they start, and I feel good about that. But as soon as I start or initiate the throw, I want to turn this discus over and carry it, my hand on top of the discus the whole way. I feel like if you watch some throwers, if you watch Sandra Perkovic, Croatia, you're going to see some of those professionals do some different things. And that's fantastic for them. They don't go to school and they don't have jobs, and that's what they do for a living, and they can do all sorts of things if they're working on how they carry the discus for 10 hours a day, 6 days a week, 12 months out of the year. But for your kids, that's not going to work in your 6 weeks of no snow in your circle. Okay? So I say make sure that you really demand that from the get-go. That's a terrible habit to try to fix later, is grip. So that's enough of that. This is my daughter, she's 1.5. And this is, can't see this, but she said she comes and watches practice once in a while. She's working on her power position right now. I don't know why she thought that the little crack in the garage, like I gotta stay behind that right there. So we got some shit to work on, man, that's terrible. But, you know, she's got some time. Power position and the stand throw. This is a picture, this is a really, I'm not happy with that lettering. This is Jason Zahn. He was a state champion in 2011 from Grafton, and I had the chance to work with Jason, I think started in 7th grade. He was a scrawny little kid in 7th grade. And he is a mountain of a man now. He throws at Ashland University. He was an All-American last year in Division II. So anywho, feet should be in heel-toe relationship. Most of you know about this. When I say clock, just so you guys know, my clock is 6 o'clock at the back, and I'm throwing towards 12 o'clock. How many people orient a clock in their circle? Do you orient it like that, or do you orient it opposite of me? Some people do opposite. So I'm just going to warn you, when it says clock, I'm throwing at 12 o'clock, okay, and 6 o'clock at the back of the circle. Weight over bent knee and ball of foot, power leg, shoulders, head and head square to the back of the circle at 6 o'clock, so there's my clock orientation. Discus back and higher than shoulder. One of the coaching things that I think I learned, I don't even remember who I learned this from, but the idea of winding up, not winding back in the power position, that's a good cue for kids. The idea that the discus has to go up, and we'll talk about orbit at some point. But so many kids, because the discus is heavy, and think about your freshman kids that never lifted a weight above their heads and don't have much shoulder structure. The idea that they're going to wind the discus and kind of let it hang out here in power position is a bad thing. Okay, if I get here, when I wind the discus back, the discus needs to go up as it gets closer to the throw. If I wind it here and I talk about orbit, my discus is going to be low here, which creates the high point here, and then at some point, if I hold on to the discus longer than that, it's going to start going back down. These are these worm burners when kids throw over the top of their throw. So I want to wind this up. As it gets closer to the front of the throw, it's going to go up. Here's my low point, okay, rather than here being my low point. So wind up, and that orbit of the discus is going to go back up. So that pendulum of the discus is helping us a little bit. If I set this potential energy up in the back and let that discus come down, there's a little bit of energy return just in the discus coming back up like a pendulum. If you start here, you're going to run into problems. Okay. So the movement of power position. Feet should initiate the throw. You guys have heard this 1,000 times. Dean and I were talking about, Dean Blonick and I were talking about feet versus hips the other day. And we'll talk a little bit about that later. But the feet, the throw has to start at the ground. We get all of our energy from the ground. If those kids start throwing that with their upper body, and you know most freshmen are going to do that, right? Okay. Throw the discus. Feet don't move at all. So the idea that this disc is just set back here, and I'm trying to pull this thing around a system where the discus isn't really moving. The only reason it's moving is because my hip's moving. Make sense, everybody? It comes from the ground. We're getting energy by pushing into the ground. Block arm remains straight as it opens. This is another really big thing that kids, I think, do poorly. They want to do something more with their left arm than they need to. If that left arm starts blocking early, and when I say block, I'm talking about this long left arm. When it gets to here, it's going to pull in. And I know I have a bunch of freshmen, and the first thing they do is kind of they're like trying to get into the store for Christmas sales with their shoulder. If they bend this elbow, they're going to speed up their upper body faster than their hips can maintain that speed. Discus is going to pass the hip, and we lose a lot of energy. Power hip pulls the discus. We talked about that a little bit already. Head should stay back as long as possible. One of the things that I think is really good to stress with younger throwers is head position and having focal points. As my kids get older, and I shouldn't say older, the kids that really grasp the concepts of the rotational movement, whether it be shot put or discus, there is a time to talk about focal points, and there's times when focal points turn kids into robots, and the flow or the rhythm of the throw is lost. But I think you've got to stress that head position, staying back at 12 o'clock as long as possible, especially when you're just throwing power position. Block leg straightens and post extends. So the left side block is not just an arm movement, you guys. At some point, this left side has to post up. So it starts kind of bent. All my weight's on my right, a little bit of weight on my left. As I rotate into this throw, this left leg is going to be bent. At some point, this left arm blocks, and the left side, this whole left side gets rigid. And I put weight on it. Okay? I think one of the hard parts also is telling kids when to shift their weight. We talk about staying on the right, stay on the right, stay on the right. Don't shift to your left early. Don't throw it over here. Well, at some point, we've got to put weight on that left so this right can keep turning into the disc and this hip can kind of break the equator line of the circle. If you don't put any weight on the left, you guys know what that looks like, where kids start kind of fading away, fade away jumpers. And that's not going to work either. Power hip continues to rotate on the post prior to extension. So I want to rotate that right hip forever. And one drill I picked up from Dave Hahn at Whitewater. You guys know Dave Hahn, very successful pro coach at UW Whitewater. He's got kids in a hurdle, okay? So regular track hurdle all the way up to their waist. And they'll put their left leg underneath the hurdle. The hurdle's basically touching them at the waist. And they'll rotate it. It could be shot or disc, it doesn't really matter. But basically, they want to take this right hip and bump the hurdle so it bounces and comes back. Does this make sense? So if the hurdle's right here, the idea of this hip continuing to rotate through the throw is going to pull that discus and create that whip that we're looking for at the finish. Most of our kids, if we go this way, you guys, sorry. Most of our kids, they're going to let go of the discus and their hips are going to be here. And so that hurdle drill, I think early is a really good one. The idea of getting this hip to smack into that hurdle. There you have it. Discus should be released at shoulder height or above after power hip completely rotates an extension at 12 o'clock. Release has to happen as late as possible in power position. And if you can train your kids to do that, keep the head back longer so the disc stays back longer. Fully get this hip to rotate before I let go of the discus. The idea of letting that hip win the race is 12 o'clock, and the discus has to come in second place every single time. Those are things that I stress with kids big time as they start this movement. So here's, here's Jason's on. Weight shifting on the left, and the hip has eclipsed the left. So if you guys get good at shooting video, I always kind of want to be on this right side. There's definitely reasons to stay at the back of the circle. But the idea of seeing that hip eclipse, I think, is really important for your power position kids. The idea that I'm going to get to here, and if you freeze that frame, is the discus still in my hand? Or did it come out here? Or did it come out here? Rotating that hip and letting the discus come absolutely last, I see is really essential. Most of these keys we've already talked about. Orbit of the discus. Non-reverse and reverse. How many people in this room teach their kids non-reverse before they teach them how to reverse? How many people in this room, once their kids know how to reverse, they don't like to non-reverse anymore? Yeah, okay, so there is a lot to be learned from non-reverse throws. And I would suggest toggling back and forth so that your kids always have access to that non-reverse movement in power, in wheel, in full. Because I think there's so much to be learned about throwing powerfully with 2 feet on the ground versus leaving the ground too early. And if you look at kind of the European model of discus throwing, a lot of them don't reverse, they do a false reverse after the throw, yes. Not even if you have shake after middle service for confused. There's really good reasons from time to time to have your kids reverse weight of the implement versus their strength, how much they can rotate their hip on the ground, and there's lots of good reasons also to be able to throw in a non-reverse. I think it's a lot easier for our strong girls to throw in a non-reverse because the implement is so light versus a heavier implement. And so, that falls apart when you get into like professional throwers and some of the college men, but there you have it. This is Landon Ellingson, Jefferson High School. I've worked with Landon since he was a 7th grader as well. He's become quite a nice thrower. Threw 180 feet last year, and I think he has a great season this year. Power position. I will have a lot of kids just do this drill, but we're just getting into power position. Show me wine, show me in the right spots. Are you in power position? One of the things, one other subtle nuance in power position, I find that kids, when they actually get the discus all the way to the back of the throw, that this right leg straightens all of a sudden, and then they're screwed. And if they don't wind it all the way back, they can keep the right knee bent. So kind of re-emphasizing like, hey, I got this all the way back, but now my right leg's straight, and re-bending this knee. It's a simple thing. Even if you have 3 or 4 kids, if you've got a line of 3 or 4, that's something they can be working on while they're waiting for their turn. I do a lot of this where we'll just break this into little pieces. I call this first movement, I don't know if you can see it, initiate, where I'm just trying to push my right knee into the ground to turn the right knee before I start opening and finish the throw. And so taking this and just breaking it into some little baby moments here. Initiate right foot, back. Initiate right foot open, back. Initiate, open, continue to rotate, finish position, release. Okay? And I try to do this side by side with 2 cameras, which is a real pain in the ass to edit, so I hope you appreciate it now that I can't see it. I feel like, man, I'm never gonna get those 20 hours back. I'm a video junkie, so if you guys want these videos, maybe I'll get them all on YouTube, and I'll ask Bill to send out an email on that, coaches. Does that sound like a good thing? And I'll link things to my website. Please feel free to visit the Madison Throws Club website. Okay, I'm not going to show you these not seeable videos. I throw a lot of stuff that aren't discs, especially if you have kids that train beyond the season. So, when WIA changed the rules and all of a sudden we could work with our kids in the summer, a lot of us have day jobs and lives. So I don't know how much you work with your kids in the summer. You can send them to the Throws Club. The idea of throwing other stuff besides discs, I think, is really good, and there's lots of reasons to do it. Cones, lengthen that long space that we want to carry that discus through, that long orbit, and the drag of the discus changes, and you've got to work a lot harder to pull that with your hip as opposed to a discus, which is more aerodynamic. I'll throw cones. I went to the bowling alley, got a bunch of bowling pins that they were going to throw in the trash. I know when Ryan McDonough was coaching at Oak Creek, he had a bunch of lead pipes that he got from his custodian, cut them to length, and they were like 4 or 5 pound lead pipes. So things that are heavier than the disc, I think, are good to throw. Can you throw off some youngsters who don't understand what they're trying to do with some heavyweight movements? Yes, and I would really watch kind of the number of reps that you're doing with those kids. But certainly your juniors and seniors being a junior and senior doesn't always equate to them knowing what the hell they're doing. But certainly your kids that have a lot of reps in them and can replicate some of the movements you're asking them to do, I would say do some things with alternate weight things. We can talk a little bit about heavy discs, and maybe we'll have some time to answer those a little bit later. Let's get to wheel position. I don't want to run out of time. Wheel position, foot and power leg starts in the middle of the circle, pointing at 11 o'clock / 12 o'clock. This looks a lot like power position, just facing the wrong direction, you guys. So that's one way to kind of get your kids to understand where do I start for wheel position. I wind the discus back the same exact way I wind in power position. I'm just going to do a half turn leading with my butt before that happens. Foot of the block leg starts in the back of the circle. Body position looks like power position, turn 180 degrees, I just said that. Okay, so here's our wheel position. This is Molly Greek. She was a state shot put champion. She threw 152 feet in the discus her senior year. And see her hip eclipsing that finish position pretty well for Molly. Molly's a big kid, but she moves really well. This is Jason's on again. It's not a great throw from Jason, but it's not bad. The idea, you see kind of both of their butt when they finish the throw rather than seeing both of the fronts of their hips at release. Does that make sense to everybody? On power position. So we're trying to get a power position that looks like our power position at the tail end of the wheel. This is easier said than done. You've been around the block more than once. Most kids are going to start the throw before they get their left foot on the ground, which is kind of, that's when things really start breaking down. Block leg must initiate throw by pushing out of the back of the circle. Weight must be maintained in the middle of the circle while the block leg pushes to the front. When you have kids do this, they are going to push from the back to the front, and they're going to end up with all their weight on their front foot. Yes, coaches? You seen this one before? I'm pushing to the back, and now I'm ready to throw power, coach. Right? Rather than ending up in this power position. So one of the cues I use for wheel is I have to provide an equal force pushing into the ground through my right knee into the ground as I am pushing my left from the back to the front. If it just becomes about the left going from the back to the front, also all your weight's going to go with it. So I'm pushing down into the ground through my right knee so that when I push to the front, my weight stays on my right knee. My weight doesn't transfer. Another good way to do this is just put your hand on top of their head while they do this position. Okay, so you stand right here, put your hand on top of their head. And tell, this is where your center of access has to remain, even though you're... Here, stand right here, bro. Oh, I'll go this way. Just kidding. Okay, so the idea of, hey, if there's a line or an X in the middle of your circle, my weight is going through my head, through my hips, through the ball of my foot, and when I get there, my head shouldn't have shifted. Your kids are going to do this. They're going to rock way back just to start, and they're going to end up way up here. Okay, so there's a really good visual for them, and a tactile one too. Unfortunately, it's mostly for the coach. Sweaty head. Sorry, Bill. Thanks. Block leg must push through in a linear path. Knee to knee or X with your calves. I don't know what cue you use. When I was in preschool, I had knee to knee driven through my head, but in the discus, I ended up picking my right foot or my left foot up really high. So the idea of pushing knee to knee as I get there, making this foot go kind of straight through the circle rather than this one. Okay. The problem with knee to knee is I can lift my foot up even though my knees are together. And then all of a sudden, the timing of the throw is off. I want to get that left foot down as fast as I can. Some kids do that really well, and at some point today, Adam Nelson will be here talking about rotational shot. And you will not see his foot be near the ground when he does, kind of goes from the back to the front. But Adam Nelson's special, and most of us aren't. So we'll let Adam Nelson do that. Okay, and we'll say that's good. When I think about X with your calves, I get my left foot much closer to this linear path from the back to the front, if that makes sense to you guys. So knee to knee is good. If you can get your guys and girls to latch on to the idea of X with your calves, getting that left foot from the back to the start, that's going to help a lot, because I think this position, like I said before, is the hardest one. The stand throw movement can only be started upon block foot touchdown. I'm trying to not rule out all the lefties when I say block foot. I mean left foot, if they're right-handed. Here's where this throw breaks down. And here's where South African really breaks down as well. The idea that I have to have my left foot on the ground before I start throwing the discus in power position is critical. Your kids are going to want to start throwing it while that left foot's not on the ground. Okay? And the problem is if I'm trying to create power with putting energy into the ground by pushing my right knee into the ground, I can't turn this hip without left foot on the ground. So that left leg post becomes something that allows me to rotate my right hip, if that makes sense. If you shoot some video early in the season, don't wait till you're just doing full throws. You're going to see all sorts of weird things in this wheel position. And timing of left foot touchdown, and when they start initiating right foot rotation or when the discus starts moving is huge. And if you can nip that in the bud early, I think that's really great. The idea that the discus hasn't really changed positions yet is huge too, and you're going to see that in the video. If you stand at this side of the circle, when left foot touchdown happens, can you see the discus behind your athlete? Or has it disappeared behind their shoulder and head? Or can you see it out on the other side of them? Your video camera's right here. And we need that discus here. Does that make sense to everybody? Old folks? I know you know what I'm talking about, youngsters. I hope you're with me. Wheel position. So these are all drills. I do not like a lot of freeze-at power drills. When I was younger, as a coach, glide, freeze-at power, glide, freeze-at power, glide, 1,000 glides, freeze-at power. Okay. When I think about the rotational movement or the glide movement for that matter, I don't want to freeze at power ever. I want to keep moving. I'm building acceleration through the throw, and I want to finish as fast as possible. I'm starting slow to fast. So the idea of doing a wheel drill and that initiate that you maybe saw in the Jason video, or maybe you just saw a dark shadow movie, this idea that once left foot touchdown happens, right hip starts moving before really my head or the discus starts moving. The reason the discus is moving at this point is because my right hip's turning. So I'll have a lot of drills where we'll wheel, and I'll just say wheel initiate, and they'll turn the right foot when they get the left foot down, left foot touchdown, right hip turns, and then they'll rotate it back to power position and freeze at power then. Does that make sense to everybody? So the idea of initiate and then stop at power, rather than stopping at power before initiate. The first thing I want to have happen once the left foot touches down is I want the right foot to keep moving. The 3-wheel drill, I'll show you some, maybe you won't see them, sorry. 3 wheels, they're on the 3rd one. Okay. Non-reverse, reverse, I really can't stress that enough. Your kids are gonna fight you on you asking them to do non-reverse throws, especially your older kids. If you're a new coach and you're inheriting kids, don't let those kids boss you around. Oh, we don't really like non-reverse, so we don't do those, coach. Well, that's great. You should go be a high jumper, because we're gonna be non-reversing a lot. And if you don't like it, I'm sure they'll buy you a new crossbar every day you break one. Dynamic wheel. Some kids are gonna like this. I think this is a little more functional for rotational shot. So just the idea of instead of starting with the right foot on the ground, lifting the right knee, and then doing the wheel position. I would say stay away from your younger kids doing dynamic wheels, and if you have older kids that do them and then your younger kids want to be like the older kids, that's great. They got to get a lot of wheels in them before they start rocking this weight around. You know, it's wheeling a lot of things. You know, I think keeping it as simple as possible and eliminating variables is a really good, healthy thing for kids. I don't know if you can see any of this. Progression gel wheel, stop at power. Progression gel wheel, initiate once you get the power position. Wheel med ball extend. Maybe you guys can see this and tell me. Some of you probably have seen this drill before. There's a ton of drills, you guys, out on the internet. That's good and bad. You know, I could give you 8,000 drills, when to use them, and how often to use them, and how many to do at each day of practice. I think is probably 10 times more important than you finding a new gadget to buy from someone or build or all those things. So that's a tricky thing. But what I do like about med ball toss or med ball extend, this idea at the finish, I want to extend this med ball straight up. You can do this with your shot putters, gliders, or your rotators. The next extension of this, no pun intended, is to actually throw the ball and then to catch it. If the ball bounces out in front of me, my shoulders have broken my hips, and I'm throwing with my shoulders in front of my hips. And I want to go into kind of a triple extension. How many people hang clean with their kids or power clean with their kids? This idea of triple extension where ankles, knees, and hips are all fully extended. This is where I want to let go of the discus or the shot put. And so if I push the med ball up and can catch it, okay, I know I'm in a good situation. If the med ball sprays out in a weird direction, okay, you're going to learn all sorts of things from the med ball. The ball starts bouncing out there, my hips are pointed out there. Okay, if I can get all the way to here and then rotate, if you've heard John Medina speak, rotation for extension, I'm rotating before I extend. It's not absolutely a truth if you look at, you know, 75% of professional throwers in the world, there's a lot of extension happening. Well, rotation happens, but it's a good overemphasis for your kids that I want to rotate and then extend. If they start rotating and throwing early before extension happens, they're just going to lose a lot of power. And they're going to use a lot of height in release. One of the things we can't control. 3 things make the discus or shot put go far: angle of release, height of release, and velocity. Any physics teachers out there? Stop by your class sometime. Things we can't control are how tall you are. But if I let go of the discus, you know, at waist, I'm making myself a hell of a lot shorter. Peter Dinklage, not a great discus thrower. Good shot there though, you guys. A lot of heart. Sticks on their back, you guys have seen stuff like this probably. The 3-wheel with the discus. I would play all these for you, but I think you wouldn't be able to see them. Again, finishing with a reverse and a not reverse, I think is really important. Here's a big one. Let's just see this side by side. So things, Landon is not perfect. He'd be the first one to tell you this. As I was editing all this video, I'm like texting Landon. I'm like, oh, we really got to work on these 27 things. But he does a fairly good job of certainly finish position. He gets a little bit left heavy from time to time. But what I do like about this position, he does not start the throw till that left foot's down. So here's left foot down. I'm probably a little late there. I can see the discus behind his back. You can't see shit. Why am I even talking about this video? You guys can't see that, can you? Kind of? Yes? All right. Yeah, it's the subtle nuance of throwing in the dark. Landon is a natural reverser, so all the videos that you're going to see of me asking him not reverse, he's gotten pretty good at non-reverse drills because I make him do that a lot, and so does his coach at Jefferson. And when I think about being able to go back and forth between reverse and non-reverse, you got to know why you're doing it. You know, if you spend some time looking at video from a meet and feel like, man, that discus is out early all day long, or you're jumping, you're off the ground, that discus is still in your hand, and you're not even close to the finish. Maybe you spend a day at practice, 5 days before the next meet. You might spend a whole day of non-reverse drills. Don't let them reverse a single time. and just have them spend time on the ground, 2 feet, contact, rotating the 2 feet on the ground. And then, you know, the next day, let's have a good day of non-reverses, I'll give you your reverse back. And treat it like a dog treat. Whatever works. This is Kaylee Camps, Belmont. She was a former state champion. She's a thrower at Minnesota now. I get to work with Kaylee's older sister, and Kaylee started with me in middle school as well. So the South African drill, when we start outside of the circle, basically new folks, my right foot's in the circle for wheel, I'm going to wheel the power position, I'm going to throw. I'm taking 1 step back, or I'm a 90-degree turn away from the start of my throw. So here's South African. I'm going to take a step. Couldn't do well, you could do this in a meet. Please don't, guys.
15.
You could put your right foot in the circle to do South African. That's one of my least favorite things. But when you're doing this, the problem with this drill, you guys, is most kids do it wrong. And it's not informing what we actually want to have happen a full throw. The idea of when I'm going to start here, I want to present or stay square to my focal point as long as possible on this first step. Before I wheel, before I throw. And the problem is, most kids will want to do this, make this really rotational. Okay? The other thing is, you start outside of the circle with your left foot. Most kids end up outside of the circle with both feet. Coach, look, you went 160. It's like, great, can't wait to see you throw 130 tomorrow when it counts. Okay, so, you know, we can throw the discus really far if we had like a 12-foot circle, you guys. But we don't have a 12-foot circle, so I'm all about drills and teaching drills the right way, but I don't necessarily want to get good at a drill that doesn't apply directly to the throw. So one way to do this would just be to kind of add the first turn to the throw. And so here's Landon, step to 90, and then maybe don't spend quite as much time in that position as possible. But the idea of like just a continuation of the start of the throw and then go into it, I think might be a better result. And folks who do this a lot, and you think I'm crazy, I would love to chat with you and see what you do to make kids do this better, because I haven't had a lot of success at my kids doing this well. Rotational shot, yeah, maybe. Okay. Wind and entry. This is Corinne up here on the top, and I don't think Corinne would be mad if I said this, but I would say that Corinne is not one of the best athletes that I've ever coached. I would say Corinne's one of the best discus throwers I've ever coached, and that is a big credit to her, working her butt off in the weight room and doing thousands and thousands of throws. But we had to simplify lots of pieces of the throw to get her to throw far. And so her wind and entry, we really kind of broke down into some basics before we get going here. The idea of sit, shift, wind was a big thing that we worked on for a long time with her, and we can get into more of that later. Separation is set up, I think, in the first part of your wind, and if you don't have separation at the wind, you're really going to struggle finding separation later in the throw miraculously. And most kids ruin a good throw before they even push their right foot out of the back of the ring. So I think simplifying the wind as much as possible is huge. This is Jason Zahn. He winds the discus much further back, so he's almost facing the back of the circle before wind. Here's his entry position. I joke with Bill and Dean about just doing a presentation on entry positions. It's one of the things that flips my lid back the most, but I think you guys would be mad at me, and so I did. Separation at wind, you guys. So here's Corinne's wind. I would have her sit, shift over the left leg, and even though she wound, keep all of her weight over the left. This is a really good simplification for your kids that are learning how to throw at the beginning, because my first movement, eventually, I'm in my first single support stage and this right foot comes off the ground, I gotta be balanced on my left. When you get to where Landon's at, if you watch a lot of professional throws, they're gonna be way over here, and then they kind of find perfect low balance on their left at that one moment that they need perfect balance for. 95 of your kids are going to suck at that. Okay? And so the idea of simplifying this and having a system, sit, shift, wind, sit, shift, wind. Okay? And then, hey, as they get more advanced, if they want to come off out of that position and then rock into it, great. But I would give that power to your kids later. 90s, 180s, 270s, 360s. I'll send you these videos so that you can see them. Here's Landon in a sit, shift, wind. Kind of basic start, sit, shift, wind. Weight stays over the left leg predominantly, sit, shift, wind. Here's Landon start, more naturally now as a senior in high school, and he's way over on his left, and the discus gets a lot further back. I'll see if I can pause that. So here's the discus, more or less splitting the circle, and here the discus is way back, much further rotational. The cool thing about it is, if your kids get good at this, they can create more separation by winding it further back, between the hip and the discus. So Dave Ostrowskis, UW Madison, talked about this, and he had an overhead shot of some of his throwers last year, and he talked about hip access relative to discus access. So here's my hip access. As I rotate the disc, I'm separated by 90 degrees. You guys see this? Okay. Most kids, the first thing they do is they unwind and then they start. And any separation they created, they will not have the rest of the throw. So the idea of making sure that we're running away from this discus at entry and leaving the discus back is really critical. Just this little wind drill into a 90 drill over and over and over again, so that when the throw gets real, they don't abandon what they got good at. I think it's really important. 90 degree drills, 180 degree drills. Don't want to run out of time, but if you have your kids do 270 drills, make sure they stop their left foot pointing at the center of the ring. When I'm rotating, you're going to have them do a 270 drill. The natural kind of finish is I'm facing here, but I'm throwing this direction. This left foot should never rotate this far. It's got to stop at 180. So if you're going to have them do a 270 drill, you know, here's 90, here's 180. This left foot's got to stay pointing at the throw, even though I'm rotating to 270. If you keep going here, this is where you're going to get over rotation. If you have kids that over rotate a lot, stop the video at entry and see what direction their left toe's pointing. And that might dictate it. There's a lot of other reasons you could over-rotate, but that's one that you could start at the ground. I usually try to fix things on the ground first and move up from there. 180 step to middle, yeah. Head at back, yeah. Yeah, relative to the disc, you know, I have had some kids that really want to whip that head and shoulder around right at the start. First question was, do you have anything to do with anything with their head at the back of the ring? So if they've got a focal point back here, that's good. Wind. Well, some kids are going to like yank with their shoulder and turn their head and they start peeking right away. The idea of just giving them something central to look at. I want to keep my head with my belly button as long as possible. And really the time that I think focal points after that initial start, because this could ruin a lot of things. This is going to catch your discus up really fast if you start looking over this left shoulder. Focal point for me is at entry, when my head gets to here, I want my head to stay here as long as possible, and now my head is with my discus the rest of the throw. So neutral start, neutral head, heads with my belly button, heads with my belly button, heads with my belly button, heads with my belly button. Once I get to here, head stays with my belly button as my right leg tries to get to the middle of the circle, left arm has stopped with my head. And now I'm going to continue rotating my hips and leave my head there, and now my discus is with my head. You want to see someone do this really well, and I know Josie Schaefer doesn't use focal points, well, you'll watch her head, and it stops at entry and stays there for a really long time. And she threw 169 last year, and she's a junior now. So that is a really critical piece of the throw. Sweep lift, push the right foot touchdown. So the next step of this drill is push to the middle, exit your calves, And I don't know how well you can see that. It's small, I apologize. And then all the way to power position and initiate. Turn the right hip. A little bit of a pause there. A full throw. Rhythm is slow to fast. We mentioned that earlier. Get a lot of kids, and I've even heard coaches say, I want to go fast, 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 fast. Yes, I do in June. Speed really can ruin a lot of the drill work that you do if you add too much speed too early. They're not going to get into positions. I tell my kids that I work with year-round in Pros Club, you know, I want to be slow and technical, and I want to add rhythm and tempo to that technique. I don't want to be fast and throw far and scratch all my throws and wonder why I can't stay in the circle later or why I'm not hitting good positions. It's going really far, okay? Or it feels like it's going really far. But a lot of times if you go too fast too early, you're going to lose a lot of positions, and they're losing distance even though they think they're gaining distance early on. I want to be able to go as fast as possible in June, hitting all the positions we worked on all year long. And so speed, I think, early in the season will kill your kids. And certainly there are outliers in that proposition.
5 minutes.
I want to sweep as wide as possible. We've had speakers here, Matt Ellis, I know from Rhode Island, cuts that back corner off and talks about that. And I want that sweep as wide as possible. If you're going to sweep wide, especially in the discus, the orbit of the discus is going to go around a longer path. A longer path physics. Longer path, I can pull that discus around, slingshot, crack the whip at the roller skating rink. I'm going to create speed because that discus is going through a longer space. If I cut that corner off with my right foot, I am going to lose distance. And I might feel faster, but again, fast at the wrong time isn't always good. Chest and knee of power leg up at entry, and I know some people have a different opinion. If you watch some great throwers, you're going to see this head tilting in towards the middle of the ring, and then they get out of this position by tilting it back this way like a snow cone. Okay? And I would prefer my kids at least to get into this upright, head up, chest up, hips get to the middle of the ring before my shoulders do. And here's my access. And now I'm rotating around this axis and staying in that axis through the throw. Does that make sense to people? I think kids that start with their head leading have a lot of balance issues. And I don't know that most high school kids, until they're older and have spent a lot of time in the weight room or are gymnasts or have the core strength to put themselves in this position and then get out of it efficiently and powerfully. So I'd much rather have my entry angle be chest up, knee up, at entry position. Let the ground come to you as the block leg pushes through. So don't start reaching with the right leg to get to the ground. I want to keep that right knee up and let the ground come to me. The longer my right knee waits to touch the ground, the better chance I have my left getting to the front. And I want to spend as much time in double contact at power position as possible. So if my right leg hits the ground early, it's going to feel like my left leg's late, and I'm going to want to throw the discus early and not spend a lot of time in power position. Here, rather than right knee up, pushing the left leg through, the higher the right knee is, the more time I'm going to have both feet on the ground. If I crash in the middle, I'm going to have a lot of time on my right and a little time on my left, and then you get this one, right? Now I'm in single support again, and I don't want to do single support again. This is Jason's on. Jason threw 191 in high school. Good positions is turning in. I don't know if you can see this. So full throw drills. You guys know hurdles, and there's a lot of stuff out there. Throw cones and pins. Throw heavy stuff. I mentioned that earlier. Near the end of the season, if you have an underweight discus that's the same size as a regular discus, Maybe you start adding some speed work in with a lighter discus. Non-reverse and reverse, make sure that kids can do both in full. They won't want to, I guarantee you. The 360 tap and go drill. What I like about this is kids who can't maintain control in the 360, the pace of that first 360 right here, to get all the way around, really dictates the pace of the actual throw through T270. If you go too fast in the 360, you're going to fall over and not be able to continue doing the 360 tap and go. So you'll fall out, you have to kind of get into that start position. But I think learning the pace of how you got to just kind of, 270 is real easy, and then just kind of ride it out and wait till you get to 360. That should be the pace of that first part of the throw. And kids can do this with a disc. They might have to turn it vertical rather than just having their hand on top of the discus, but 360 tap and go. Stuff with cones. Here's a non-reverse full. I'm going to run out of time here, I apologize. If you guys are YouTube people, a lot of these throws are on that all-time list. If you go to my Madison Throws Club site, or go to my YouTube and subscribe, and I just post everything I can that's good. If you're looking for discus stuff, Luke Sullivan, state record holding discus, and I have done the clinic for a long time. Luke's coming back from Arizona to do that clinic again on March 12th. Many of your kids have gone to that in the past. They can register for that online right now. LukeSullivanDiscusStore.com is a link from MadisonThrowsClub.com as well. If you have questions throughout the season, I'm not a head coach anymore. So I might even get back to you. If you had I've had a really wonderful time talking with other coaches about helping me solve a problem with kids. Hey, you got any drills for this? I think that's one of the powerful things about our community. I hope we can continue to do that. My mission in life is to make the throws better in Wisconsin, because it makes my kids better if your kids are better. And so if I can help your kids, I don't have any conflict of interest with that. I've had some ultra competitive kids disagree with that idea, but those kids come and go, and we're going to be here for a long time. And the idea of pushing throws forward in Wisconsin in our tiny little outdoor season that sometimes doesn't have snow, I'm a big fan of that idea. Thank you guys. I know we're out of time.